Hello subscribers and non-subscribers, this footage here, or this episode, is going to be the Q&A. I'm actually going to be doing it much earlier than I originally planned to, mostly just because none of you guys ever posed any questions to me, and I doubt you guys will be posing any questions to me within the next 3 weeks. So I've decided I'm just going to go and do it early. So yeah, this video should be just barely long enough, potentially. But of course, it's Battlefield 4, and this is the last Battlefield 4 footage you'll ever see on my channel. Mostly because I just have no real use for it anymore. I uninstalled it. I don't play it often enough, and yeah. And I don't necessarily plan to pick up Hardline, so you guys probably won't see any footage of that on my channel either. And so yeah. So let's just go ahead and move on to the questions, and I'll try to remember to actually have them show up on screen. So for the first question, which of course all these ones are ones that I made, I consider them fairly basic questions, is my name. My full first name is Alexander, however I generally just go by Alex, just because it's much shorter. And that mostly is just because homework assignments and whatnot, sometimes I don't have enough room to like put out my full first name, so I just go and put just Alex instead. As for my age, I am 18. However, I will be turning 19 this month, actually, December. Specifically, actually, on the 27th. Yeah. But of course, that usually means that if I'm in Florida visiting family, I tend to go and actually celebrate my birthday pretty much on Christmas because it's much easier. So yeah, that's the way that is. When exactly was it that I first started playing video games? Around 7, and I never really played video games that were meant for a 7-year-old. I've been playing first-person shooters and the like since about 7. Those are some of the earliest games that I had played. Specifically, more so Medal of Honor. The first Call of Duty I ever played was Call of Duty 3, so that wasn't until the 360 era. Although the first gaming console that I'd ever, maybe not necessarily actually played a game on, but I had at least seen, what obviously outside the PC, so obviously specifically consoles, was the original PlayStation, because my daycare had one. I don't think I ever actually played it. In fact, I think the only game they had was like Pac-Man, and that was basically it. And it may not have actually been Pac-Man. It may have just been a Pac-Man style game. So yeah, that was not exactly my kind of game. So yeah. I did own a PlayStation 2. That's where I played a decent number of games. Although when it came to first-person shooters specifically, I really first started playing them on the original Xbox. I personally don't really like the PlayStation controllers. They just feel uncomfortable to me. While the Xbox controller actually felt quite nice, and so I ended up mostly spending my time on the Xbox as opposed to the PlayStation 2 because of that. I also owned a GameCube, didn't really play that too much. I didn't have very many games for it. I think all in all I had like 4 or 5. PlayStation 2 I probably had like 10, and the original Xbox maybe like 15. But that's just a guess without obviously actually really going and spending the time to try to find out how many I have. But I don't really care to try to find out specifically for that. What is my favorite genre of video games? I don't really have a specific one. I tend to bounce between them depending on my mood. One day I'll be wanting to play an FPS, so I'll just go and install some random FPS, or if I have one installed on my computer, I'll just go ahead and hop on and play that for a little while. As for, and then the next day I'll end up going and wanting to play a strategy game like Total War or Europa Universalis or something. And so I'll end up going and just playing one of those if I have it installed, and if I don't, I'll install it and then play it. So yeah, I generally bounce between things, but it's like that for me with basically everything. I very quickly tend to get bored with something and move on to the next thing. It's very rare for a game to keep my interest for multiple days in a row, without me basically forcing myself to go and play them, which is never particularly enjoyable, of course. My hobbies, Well, as I said, basically anything that catches my interest, as you heard right back there just a couple seconds ago. But of course, obviously, gaming. Uh, I tend to read more in the way of manga and watch more in the way of anime as opposed to other things. Mostly just because I don't know what it is. I haven't been able to really get into Western media as much. After some point, I just stopped really being able to get into it. So generally reading novels and the like isn't particularly interesting to me. Well, that's never been particularly interested to me in the first place. Um, but yeah, that's just the way it is. Um, Anything that I specifically like to do, well, build computers. But I obviously prefer to build my own computers and not necessarily build them for other people. But of course, if a friend of mine were to walk up to me and say, "Hey, I want you to go and build me a gaming computer," I don't mind doing so. I will gladly do so. They just got to let me know what some of the specifics are, what's their budget and things like that. Do they prefer to have AMD or Intel for their CPU, or do they, and then for their graphics card, do they prefer to have AMD or NVIDIA? All of that is fairly important to building it. Because if their budget's fairly low, but they prefer Intel and NVIDIA, then I generally will have to make budget cuts elsewhere on the system, whether that be the hard drive, the RAM, whatever. So yeah, I generally like to build computers, more so specifically mine. But again, like I said, I don't mind building one for a friend if they were to ask me to, but that doesn't happen. My friends play console for the most part. Very rarely do they get PC, and I haven't talked to them in ages. I say ages, okay, it's more like a year and a half potentially. And that's mostly just because I haven't played console for the most part for like a year and a half, so kind of hard for me to really talk to them, especially since I'm in college, they're in high school. Unless I feel like waking up at like 7:30 in the morning and hanging out at the bus stop, which I don't really want to do that, especially in winter when it's going to be like 30 degrees outside in the morning. No, thank you. I will stay in my house where it's nice and warm. But yeah, so those are the questions at least that I was able to come up with. If there's any that I missed, of course, you guys can just go and drop them off in the comment section. I will, to the best of my ability, answer them. Yeah, okay. This the footage here was actually longer than I expected. Well, I guess really the posing myself these questions and then answering them was much faster than I expected. It's actually probably a more truthful way of phrasing that. And so, yeah, like I said, I just had some basic questions that I decided to throw out. I didn't particularly have anything too specific. So yeah, if you guys want to know the answer to something that's more specific that I didn't come up with, or even something that's basic that I didn't come up with, or think about potentially having be a question, you guys can just go ahead and again, just drop them off in the comment section. I'll, again, to the best of my ability, answer them. If it's something that I don't feel as though you guys need to know, I will not answer it. It's that simple. But that probably isn't exactly going to be common. You guys, I would imagine, would pose reasonable questions. You wouldn't ask me something that just seems weird for you guys to want and or feel the need to know. But of course, I don't really know you guys, so that's a fairly difficult thing for me to do at the end of the day. That's just, so really I'm just guessing, and guessing isn't particularly good. But yeah, so I'm actually going to go ahead and cut this off right here and go back and actually attempt to add in the questions, because might as well go and put them on screen so that you guys can read them. And so yeah, that's going to be it. As always, like, favorite, comment, subscribe, share, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.